Hello everybody, welcome to Awesome Rusty Buck. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already and drop a like on this video. I'm trying to hit 100k subscribers, so your subscription would be much appreciated. So today I want to talk about the All-Star Game. I realize I'm a little bit late to doing so, but I've kind of just been pondering on it and sitting with it because of the question that a lot of people have been asking. I know Kenny made a video on it, my good friend Alex Hoops made a video on it. Is it even really theoretically possible to make the All-Star Game not what the All-Star Game has historically been, which is essentially a bunch of players just kind of trying to do highlight plays from time to time, but the defense is completely not there. And of course, in this last All-Star Game, it was particularly egregious. Now, I try not to be too negative. I realize that sounds maybe like crap coming from me because I tend to lean negative naturally, but overall, I tend to just view it like, hey, at the end of the day, it's basketball. I'm not going to get too upset with it. But there were times watching the All-Star Game where I was genuinely bothered and genuinely felt like, what is even the point at this point? What is the point of even having the All-Star Game? Now, if you're not aware, this was the worst viewed All-Star Games in the last 20 years. I would wager it's probably the worst viewed one in the last 30 years, but the stats were only there for the last 20. In 2003, the All-Star Game got 10 million live viewers. In 2023, it got, I think it was 4 or 6. And to put that into perspective as well, the United States population, the US being where a majority of the NBA fandom comes from, I can tell you that personally from my own analytics, the population in the United States has gone up by 50 million people. So with the population increasing that dramatically, which I think would be like 1/6 of what it was 50 million is, because it's like 350 or 400 now, whatever it is. The population has increased, so if anything, you would expect the numbers to go up, but people have continually gotten more and more and more disillusioned with the All-Star Game and kind of realized exactly what it is. And that's the problem here. The problem that everyone's tackling is the All-Star Game kind of by design is set up to be this way, and there's really no way to break it from being what it is outside of jumping to some extremes that a lot of people are pretty uncomfortable with. Like, I know I saw an idea suggested that's like, make it Eastern Conference versus Western Conference again, which I have my gripes with, but for this particular instance it makes sense. Make it that again, and then whichever conference wins the game, that team gets home court advantage in the finals. I was like, yeah, that immediately gets every single player that is on a contender interested and trying. So like maybe the players that are on maybe you know, if LaMelo Ball was in the game, he's not gonna show out, but you know, like Jason Tatum is gonna put his all in. Not that he didn't this one, he set the record for most points in an All-Star game, which sucks because it was boring as hell, but I believe that Anthony Davis's 53 was significantly more fun to watch than Jason Tatum's 55, and that's as someone who likes Jason Tatum a lot more than Anthony Davis. My overarching point, the idea of that, I understand, will probably make the All-Star Game immediately like a gigantic event and everybody's watching and it's a huge deal. The problem though is immediately a lot of you are probably like, do I want home court advantage for the championship determined by a freaking All-Star Game? I understand why that would put people off. Again, I also hate the idea of going back to conferences, but also at the same time, as much as I hated the fact that like a player would not make the All-Star Game because they were in the West and the West was deeper, whereas you'd see like freaking Roy Hibbert in the All-Star Game in the East and you're like, what are we doing here? Or Kyle Korver, and you're like, that's just purely because of the situation in the conferences and has nothing to do with the talent, because I guarantee you, even though Kyle Korver was very good in 2015, he was not a top 30 player in the league for sure. So at the same time, the idea of the conferences and the rivalry between the conference, it seems to be there more significantly than like Team LeBron versus Team Giannis. Like, who really gives a shit about that at all? I know I don't. I like the idea of seeing these Western Conference and Eastern Conference players coming together, and that's a cool dynamic, but it kind of takes away even further from the competition of it. It even further leans into it being an Jesus Christ, exhibition, am I saying that right, game? It literally makes it a pickup game, you know, like picking the players live, and good lord, that took too long. That's a whole other ordeal. I don't want to focus specifically on the 2023 All-Star game, but you know, I want to say I saw a lot of people keep referring to the 2020 All-Star game, like, how do we get this back? I don't know why people keep leaving the fact that Kobe Bryant's death was a huge part of that out of the equation. Like, it's just simply a matter of fact that they were playing for him, and they put the passion and the energy into that game for him, and it was a beautiful thing and one of the best days in NBA history. And truly, the fact that the season got shut down, I think not even a month after that game happened, adds to it even further, where that really felt like a special event in NBA history that I will never forget. And it even felt more solidified by the fact that that was really the last big thing to happen in the NBA before a 7-month shutdown. So I just want to say, I don't know why people keep bringing that game up as if that's something that can be replicated. So yeah, I just want to put that out there. I kept seeing that and I was just like, do you guys just not know what context is? Because it sucks that this is why it happened, obviously, for a million reasons, but that is why it happened the way that it did. So let's not ignore that. I don't think, yeah. Anyways, I don't know, like, it feels like anything that you would suggest that would add stakes to it feels like it is making the All-Star game too significant, but not having any stakes at all makes the All-Star game feel entirely pointless. So it seems like one way or the other you're gonna piss somebody off. Even though I suggested the idea of like the finals home court advantage, that would kind of piss me off if like I was a fan of the Celtics and the West won, and like not even particularly because of the fault of Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown, you know? And now suddenly, because a bunch of players on other teams in the Eastern Conference couldn't do what they were supposed to do and win the damn game, now my team is going into the NBA Finals with a disadvantage, and immediately people would be applying like an asterisk to that. They'd be like, man, they only won this game, they only won this series because they got home court advantage because of the All-Star game. So I feel like that's an area that's too extreme, but you obviously can't do it in conference finals or anything like that. I don't really see a way to make it matter. Like, even if you throw a bunch of money at the players, most of those players already have a bunch of money. If you throw it at charity, you either do the charity versus charity thing, which is kind of messed up, or you just give money to charity, both charities either way, and at that point there's no incentive to try harder. So there's just really no way around that I can see the All-Star game just not really being that good or that important, you know? There are cool moments that come of it. It's a nice accolade for a player, a way to recognize that these players are all-time talents, you know, or at least that they had these seasons individually for the case of players who only get it once or twice. But man, I just don't see a way around it. The more I try to talk through it, I've had thoughts about this for the last damn week, and I still cannot find an area where you can make the All-Star game have higher stakes without pissing off so many people. And if you can't give it higher stakes, I don't really see what the point is. So yeah, this All-Star game in particular, I guess I can quickly talk about the 2023 one just at the end here. Man, like half of the time, if not more, all 10 players were not on one side of the court at any given time. Like, whether it was getting back on offense or getting back on defense, they just didn't do it, and it was pretty painful to watch. And it felt almost like a parody of like what like old heads think modern basketball is. Like, people who hate modern basketball, they think that the All-Star game is what they think it looks like. It doesn't. But I would understand why, if it looked like that to you, why you would not want to watch that shit. But yeah, that's it. Goodbye.